Hi there, welcome to Gnostic Vlog Confessio 17. All my life, or pretty much all my life, I've felt completely estranged from family, local community where I grew up, humanity in general, and of course now estranged from social media. So this meant I've felt very isolated all my life. And there have been times when I have experienced a camaraderie and even a oneness with other people of like minds, like spiritual minds, I suppose, and which has, been very good, and perhaps as more than other people have ever had. I think I was dead lucky to belong to a coven in my local area, where I only had to walk to the coven meetings because, how many people have ever had that experience, Oh, and that's such a big experience, actually, that, it might even compensate for all the other feelings of isolation that I've ever had. But because I'm a depressive, I only look I only look at all the negative things that have happened in my life and none of the positive. So that's the isolation and estrangement. And of course, one of the keynotes of my life is frustration. I've always felt totally frustrated with a big F, which, as I've told you before, has led, of course, to aggression and anger and rage and wrath and self-harm and stuff like that. So there's agri frustration. I don't want to dwell on that too much, really, because it's so powerful that it's like a sort of psychic energy now. Frustration. It kind of pops up whenever I least expect it now. And of course, with frustration, I suppose also comes jealousy. I think I contemplated this morning, and I think I'm a very jealous person. And I always think everybody else is doing better than me and has a better cut of the cake than I have. So resentment and jealousy, obviously, resentment goes together with jealousy. And believe it or not, I'm feeling pretty happy now that the whole world is crumbling, because I don't feel jealous of anybody. Everybody's dying and living in fear and generally having a really bad crap time and restricted movements, and I don't know what as a result of coronavirus, as I make this video. And so it very messed up, but I actually feel quite happy now. I mean, a lot of neurotic people do actually feel really great when there's catastrophe, real catastrophe. And often neurotic people step up to the plate or come out of their shell and generally feel jolly good about themselves as a result of seeing everybody else's suffering. But then maybe that's why people like, disaster movies and watching clowns slip on bananas, because we all we all like to see other people suffering more than us. I mean, suffering, pleasure, and dukkha and sukha are relative, aren't they? Really, to put it in Buddhist terms, pleasure and pain, all relative. But yes, overwhelming jealousy of other people, jealous of other people's freedoms, to put it as Mr. Bush would say. And then, of course, there's a feeling of great loss. But before we get on to that, feeling of great being a loser, I think, really. Now, a loser, and I've missed the punchline now, because a loser can either mean, usually it means somebody who feels inadequate in some way. So the big I, big adequate, the inadequate I. So that it's the big I in the sky. And but the other sense of the word loser, I suppose, is somebody who's literally lost something. And often people talk about the fact that we have lost our way, and we've fallen into sin, we've fallen into error, we've fallen into the sin of wasting time, we've fallen into the sin of missing the mark. We have become, materialistic. We have become, we've become dispersed, and all the words beginning with dis that you can think of. So we're under the thrall of dis, if you like, and have lost our way. The other thing people say, which is even more chilling, is we've lost our soul. We've lost our souls to the to industrialization, for example. And this is a notion that's been around, for a couple of 100 years, that man has lost his natural soul. Some people think we've lost our soul to the military-industrial complex, to the Illuminati, in quotation marks. And some people think we've lost our soul to modernism. We've lost our way. So, losing your soul and losing your way are often linked to modernism. And again, you're not looking at modernism in a good light, but in a depressive sort of light, a negative light. Other people say rather hopefully that in fact we actually haven't lost anything at all. We didn't start off with anything. And we won't finish with anything, but we haven't lost anything. And at any time during our lives, this very moment, we can decide to gain something, which again is relative. You could just watch a YouTube video on something you knew nothing about before, and that's your gaining knowledge, or you can gain some experience, or you can retrain, or you can go back to school or something, or take online courses or something, and you can actually decide to gain. And it might be that you just gain a bit of knowledge, or you gain some business idea, and you gain the trust of other people, and they finance you, and hey presto, you're the CEO bitch, And so at any time we can change our lives. We can make a decision. We can learn a new language of positivity at any time of our lives as well. So loss. Well, if you didn't lose anything at the beginning, if at any time in our lives we're sort of at the nadir, then we can decide to go up, can't we? And things go up as well as down, right? So there's positive thinking in rudimentary terms there. I know it's a bit more, and we can think about abundance instead of loss, But of course, the other thing, looking at it metaphysically, is that we have lost connection with the divine. We have literally lost sight of the divine. And of course, the Holy Grail is the vision of the divine. And we've lost that vision, but we can at any time regain that vision through Gnostic experience, through the experience of knowing the divine in some way, shape, or form. And I think that's very, very important. So, to me, Gnosticism is about Gnosticism as a practice or a paradigm, or even a religion, is a reconnecting to the divine. Perhaps as a result of feeling like a loser and feeling frustrated and jealous and estranged from society and humanity in general. That ironically enough, you can actually reconnect to yourself, and to the divine and to the rest of humanity as a result of seeing again the divine. So the vision of the Holy Grail actually reconnects you to yourself, reconnects you to the divine, obviously, reconnects you to humanity, and you see that you see divinity within all things, including with all people, and especially within all people, the good, bad, and the ugly. You appreciate the goodness of people. You accept the evil of people, and it is possible to be redeemed from your selfish and mean ways. And you accept people who are both beautiful and ugly, whatever beautiful and ugly actually means, which nobody actually does know what they mean anyway. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder in any case. So you can reconnect to common sense, I suppose, really. So for me, the vision of the Holy Grail is about reconnecting to X, as one might say, to the gnosis, to the knowledge. And this will help me to cope with jealousy, inadequacy, frustration, and estrangement, and alienation. In another video, I go on about, the problem of self-alienation, the problem and the solution. It's a very major video, and one which I'll upload shortly. So it's important for me to have the vision of the Holy Grail and to retain that vision, remember it in tranquility. I mean, you can't have the emotion of first seeing the Grail. You can't keep that up in this world, but you can remember your emotions in tranquility. I think, as Wordsworth said about poetry, and so you can create the Holy Grail as an image or a poem, or a piece of music or a sculpture or something like that. You can actually recreate the vision of the Holy Grail in some shape or form in the material universe. And it is a sort of facsimile, as it were, of the actual experience of the Holy Grail as a sort of life-changing vision. And of course, that vision doesn't necessarily have to come all at once. It can come gradually. The veil that hangs over the Grail can be lifted very, very gradually in bitty bits, like sort of thing, as indeed, I suppose, one sense of frustration, inadequacy, estrangement, and jealousy. They can be reduced in increments as well. They don't have to all go at the at the same time immediately, because of course, all these emotions which I've had all my life, they are a source of comfort. They're even a source of strength, even of aspiration or inspiration in a twisted sort of way. So, I've written much about my frustration, jealousy, inadequacy, and estrangement. So you could, so they could say that these negative emotions have been a source of positive creativity, which is a contradiction that you would only find in the lower worlds and the worlds of the demiurge. But it is as it is, and so and I say all this, not to sort of brag. I don't know about my own sense of achievement, because I don't think I have achieved that much anyway. I'm just sort of extrapolating from my own experience of myself to perhaps your experience of yourself. Maybe you've had a similar cluster of feelings of inadequacy, estrangement, frustration, and jealousy. And maybe during this time of catastrophe or crisis, at least, you're sort of looking at these negative emotions in a new way, because everybody is suffering in one form or another as a result of this corona crisis, as well as you. So I suppose we've formed a kind of, if you like, a community of sufferers, which is what war does as well. War brings people together because I think we become a community of sufferers, and then we can all appreciate each other's suffering. We're not all, locked in the mindset that we're all alone in our suffering. It's other people that are feeling exactly the same way as you are. I mean, the only thing I ever said to my niece once was about school. And she said she was frightened of school and felt crap about it and inadequate. And I said, well, you join the club. Everybody else is probably feeling the same way as you. But some people react by being introverted. And some people react by being extroverts and going around saying, oh, all jolly holly sticks and, come on, shut up, lads. And they're all full of bonhomie. But underneath, they're just about as terrified as you as starting a new school, as everybody else, because it's completely natural to be terrified of a new situation, to go into something that you don't know anything about. The mysterious is frightening to everybody. It's just we have different ways of coping with it. Some people cope by, saying, what's the matter with you then? You should be tough like me. And they give the sort of impression of being tough, but they're not actually that tough at all. Which was really what got to me about a lot of left-hand path stuff, about all this kind of macho thing, I'm really tough and I'm a deity and I'm a god and I can do what I like and, I'm very sort of like, I'm very tough, very sort of spiritually strengthened by trying to convince myself I'm very strong. I mean, it's all BS, really. Because the fact is, you see, that compared to the physical universe, you are but a straw in the wind. I mean, you are a grape that can be crushed at any time and will be crushed inevitably by death itself. And your body will go back to being dust from where it came. We came from dust, and to dust we shall return. And you can prettify it by saying we all come from the goddess, and to the goddess we will return. But the goddess is also dust, you see, and clay, and bone marrow, and teeth. And that's all that'll be left of you is your teeth. You know what I mean? If you're buried and if you're burnt, there'll be nothing left of you except a pile of grey dust. I remember actually scattering the ashes, as they call them, of my grandmother, and there was nothing in the box except a pile of grey dust and silver dust, and most of that was probably her coffin, not even her, and her bones and her teeth, and everything else was just wood, and that's it. Everything else had gone up the chimney. And so when you realise that, you think to yourself, what else is there? Well, of course, there's the fullness of spirit, which is quite a lot. In fact, it's an infinite amount more than we actually have on this particular dimension of the demiurge. So fear not, and do not be despairing, because when you've seen the vision of the Holy Grail, which is the Holy Spirit in one symbolic form, one meta symbol, as it were, then there is much to not feel frustrated about. There is much not to be estranged about. There is much not to be jealous of or inadequate about. I mean, because you partake of that fullness of spirit. You definitely partake of it, and therefore you'll never be frustrated. You'll never be a loser again. In fact, you're not a loser now if you have seen that vision and you've partaken of the Holy Spirit. Then basically you're not a loser anymore. Well, you never were a loser, you just thought you were. But now you don't even think you are. But you're not a gainer either, particularly. So you're not a loser, and you haven't gained $1 million overnight either. You are just an ordinary person who has seen an extraordinary thing, and who now possesses an extraordinary corpus of knowledge, all of which points to the fullness of spirit, which is something that inevitably awaits you after death. And that is something which is a great comfort and a great source of meaning in life. And so basically, when you look at your inadequacies and your fears and your frustrations, when you hold them up like a candle to the sun, well, you literally almost can't see the candle for the brightness of the sun. And this is no mere sort of promise or platitude. This is actually what happens. Well, at least I suppose it is a bit of a theoretical thing. I don't know whether I can take all my negativity and hold it up to the sun like a candle. I'm not sure. I haven't tried it yet, really. So maybe if I succeed in doing that, I'll report back to you in one of these Gnostic vlogs if it does work. So stay tuned for the next exciting installment in my sorry spiritual career.